One of the things too that I mentioned in regards to the Joker movie, the Joker sequel. Yesterday, the internet was abuzz, and I mean ablaze, on fire, like Gotham at the end of Joker, talking about the sequel, right? Todd Phillips gets Joker sequel greenlit, ends up grabbing another DC origin movie in the process of it. The story I hear is that the Joker 3, Joker trilogy, like the Hangover trilogy would be a thing. But now today, in a very odd situation, we find ourselves getting a rebuttal from Todd Phillips himself, where he says here he refutes and corrects the Joker 2 reports. Now, let's take a quick guess as to how he's gonna try to change this up, right? We can kind of already guess this. So it says here, despite a major report that surfaced yesterday morning, it appears that Joker 2 is far from a done deal. Director Todd Phillips and star Joaquin Phoenix have been talking about the idea of a sequel off and on the entire press run, coming around to the notion of continuing the story. As long as the sequel could be as thematically rich and character-centric as the first movie, Phoenix even made his own posters for Joker 2 during filming. So it sounds like the actor was keen on reprising his stunning role. Which is interesting because we all know that he's famous for not wanting to do sequels. Which is, again, that's one of those crazy things. So it wasn't shocking yesterday when Hollywood Reporter reported that Phillips was in talks to co-write and direct Joker 2, and that Phoenix was under contract option for the follow-up. Moreover, Hollywood Reporter said, at the weekend, the Joker opened to huge numbers at the box office. Phillips met with Toby Emmerich and Warner Brothers head and asked to take control of a handful of DC characters to make more Joker-esque gritty origin stories, coming away with the rights to at least one. Now, this is where it gets a little crazy. Shortly after the report surfaced, and it says here that it should be noted that THR's reporting is almost always right on the money. Fellow trade Deadline and Variety disputed the report, citing their own sources who said Joker 2 was far from a done deal. It was tough to suss out exactly what was going on, and now Phillips is talking about it as well. Speaking to IndieWire, he says, I can honestly say to you that there was no meeting that ever happened on October 7th where I marched in. First of all, if you know me in my career, that's not my style. I made a huge comedy at Warner Brothers, The Hangover, and I didn't suddenly become a comedy factory producer. Like, oh, let's just churn out movies. Bradley Cooper and I have a production company at Warner's. I've been at Warner's for 15, 16 years. We have 2 things in development at all times, not 40 things like some people. I'm not the kind of guy who goes marching in and saying, I want these 40 titles. I just don't have the kind of energy. But if you think about it, if you look at what he's saying there, he's not saying no. Right? He is not saying no by any means. He's just saying that's not how the story went out. Right? The Hollywood Reporter saying, oh, yeah, no. Todd Phillips marched into Toby Emmerich's office and demanded to take control of certain DC characters in order to be able to give them gritty origin stories like the Joker. And he's saying, that's not how it happened. But he doesn't say what happened. At least not in that quote. He doesn't say it. So he's refuting the details, right, of the story. But again, the devil is always in the details. So you got to pay attention and read between the lines because that's where the truth lies. He's been at Warner's for 15, 16 years. He's got 2 projects in production or in development at all times, not 40. Well, Joker 2, Joker 3. Maybe. And I say maybe because, in between, I think it was Hangover 2 and Hangover 3, he went and did Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. So he can juggle some projects. Anyway, now he did say that he pitched the idea, starting with a DC Black Label for Joker, but WB shot that down before Joker was even greenlit. Now, Phillips has said that he's flummoxed on how the notion of that meeting came to be in the first place, and maintains that while he and Phoenix have been talking about a sequel since week 2 of shooting, no deals are in place for them to return for another film. Well, yeah, what that means essentially is they haven't signed the deal. They haven't signed the contract yet. But saying that there's no deal in place doesn't mean there's no deals being discussed. If he's been around for as long as he has at this point now, Road Trip, this next summer will be 20 years old. So Todd Phillips has been in the game for a while. Now he says, here's the truth about the sequel. Well, Joaquin and I have talked about it. And we are touring the world with Warner Brothers executives, going to Toronto and Venice and other places, of course. We're sitting at dinner and they're saying, so have you guys thought about, but talking about contracts, there's no contract for us even to write a sequel. We've never approached Joaquin to be in a sequel. Will that happen? Again, I just think the article was anticipatory at best. Notice how it doesn't say no. Notice how it doesn't say that this isn't happening. Notice all of those things that he's saying that he's not saying there. And really, what is it that he's saying? He's saying that the contracts aren't signed and therefore the deal isn't done or the deal isn't in place. But let's stop for a second and really kind of just analyze the situation as a whole. You have a movie with a $65 million budget that in the span of a month and some change pulled in over $1 billion globally without going to China, while being lambasted by the media, attacked by the media, destroyed by the media, claim that if you watch this movie, you could potentially be a shooter, that you could potentially be a bad thing, that you could do all of these horrible things. That's what the movie was saying. That's what people were saying, right? That's what they were saying. And they offered up no apologies, no mea culpas, no, oops, our bad guys didn't really mean it, sorry. But the movie still captivated audiences and went on to do over $1 billion. I find it to be fascinating that it made that kind of money. And I find it to be amazing that it did what it did. And I've said this before, and I'll say this again. I don't necessarily think I want a Joker sequel. I don't know, unless they do a really good job with it. You know, and I feel like they would. But I say I don't really want a sequel because I feel like the movie in and of itself got the point across. It was a dark, cynical, bitter take on society about a man who was left behind, fell between the cracks. Where would you take it that could convey the same level of emotional resonance that people had with this movie? I don't know. That's not to say that I'm not curious to find out. But when you make $1 billion at the box office, there is no way you're not getting a sequel. Name me $1 billion movie that is not going to have a sequel attached to it. You can't. Movies that pull in 700 million get a sequel, but 1 billion, it's getting a sequel. It's that's all it is. It's all it is. They want a sequel and they're going to find a way to get it. And at this point now, we're literally just waiting for that green light and that announcement. Now, what I heard, again, this is coming from Mikey Sutton, gave me a few finer points of details. What I heard was that the deals aren't signed. There's no contracts that are signed, but they're working on it. And they want to announce it at a big event. And I've talked to other friends of mine who have suggested that they were going to announce a sequel after the Oscars because they didn't want to hurt their Oscar campaign by announcing a sequel beforehand. And I don't see that having hurt it. I mean, Black Panther was up for Best Picture and it's it was number 20, 19 or 20, in these movies. So I don't think that really matters. But my theory, and I stand by that theory, is that it could potentially be the CCXP in Brazil because I've already got a big DC appearance there. Why not mention Joker 2? Just seems to make the most amount of sense. It will get worldwide press. Fans will lose their mind and they'll get all the benefits and all the goodwill of announcing it at a fan event like that, then just kind of leaking the information or posting the information in a press release to Hollywood Reporter or Variety or Deadline, where people in the trades read it, but not the fans so much. Doing it at a fan event because, that's the best place. But I am curious to know your thoughts and your opinions on this one. I'm sure you guys all have your own takes, and I want to definitely hear them. This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo.